I think it's fair to say that there has been a lot of contention in the fandom about the Legacy stylization, but I think I mostly noticed that with the Prime figures. Perhaps that's due to the animated figures being more faithful, or it's due to the over-reverence of Prime. How dare you change our perfect children! Or maybe it's just due to the fact that people are that much more desperate for good animated figures, as they've been getting ignored for way longer. A man dying of dehydration in the desert isn't going to complain that there's some dirt at the bottom of the glass of water you give him. It's Legacy Bumblebee. But first, your likes! Please give. And if you enjoyed this video by the end and you aren't subscribed already, please consider it. And you want to know what my thoughts about this thing are? It's okay. You might be a bit concerned about the size. I understand why. This is definitely on the insanely small side for deluxe scale, and unfortunately, this is going to be one of those harsh middle grounds that they have to tread. If they want it to be in scale, the character is supposed to be unbelievably tiny. But at the same time, if you made it a core class figure, it would be too crushingly small, and you wouldn't have the complexity to make it look good. Plus, I think that everyone would riot if they shortchanged this character. Begs the question why they thought they could get away with it for Rat Trap, but here's hoping that eventually they come out with something in a higher size class for our trash-eating boy. So this has a tight line to tread, and I think it does a good job doing it. And hilariously enough, it's actually better than what we've gotten in the past. To the people complaining that he's too small, he's actually a tiny bit taller than the Cliff Jump ER. And he looks a lot better too. Honestly, it's probably more accurate, and unlike the Earthrise Cliff Jumper, he's not bullshit. This guy really shows just how much of a phoned-in cash grab that thing was, because this, in all ways, is superior to what the Cliff Jump ER did. Oh, and the arms look way better than we were worried about. Turns out that yes, that visible gap in the pictures that Hasbro released were just mistransformed. Though it is a bit easy to do that, so for once, I don't fully blame that on the incompetence of Jimmy, the executive's nephew, for having no clue what he was doing. Doesn't explain all the other times he's fucked up the photography though. Look, maybe my memories of animated are fading, and maybe it's the fact that I've always described the art style of animated as a comic book villain's evil superweapon meant to cause people to rip their own eyes out, but I actually happen to think that this looks really accurate and remarkably cool at the same time. The head and body feel like they clash a little bit, which makes me think that I'm not picking up on just how much stylization there is here, but at the same time, I'm really struggling to point out what's wrong with this when you compare it to the actual show model. Save for the fact that he's not just a human in a leotard. The one thing that for sure could look better is the untucked area of his abs. Not only does that look unfinished, but it also makes me think that he's wearing a half shirt. And I don't like that mental image. Especially not with the Speedo right under that. Bro looks like when the pizza shows up, he asks if he can pay some other way, only for the driver to insist on cash. There's basically no hollowness on this thing, which Cliff Jump ER has to use a parts-forming piece to hide, so chalk up another win for Bumblebee, though perhaps his first real loss is just how insubstantial he becomes from the top due to how much of him is clear plastic. Dude basically turns invisible when you're looking at him from the collar down. And there are a lot of joints and tabs in this clear plastic, so time will tell if you start seeing broken copies appear all over eBay. The good news is the paint is pretty well color matched, even if on close inspection you can tell something's off. But for the most part, I'm pretty happy with the way this looks and feels. Hilariously, the joints that are loose tend to be the ones that are made out of opaque plastic, rather than the clear stuff, but that may not last long. Head is probably the most faithful of the non-G1 stuff we've gotten from Legacy. This is the animated head, unchanged, plonked on a more angular bot's body. And yeah, there's a bit of aesthetic clash here, but it's not a terrible one. It does feel a little like you're looking at a head that you stole from a different figure, but it's not punching you in the face. And I think that most of the fans are going to be super happy that they got something that looks this correct. Though I can tell you, the fact that he has a smile on only half of his face makes OCD Man very upset. So, it's a good-looking robot mode. There are a few flaws, but I don't think that they outweigh the pros. And if you're a fan of the animated aesthetic, then I think you will find even more forgiveness in your heart than me. As someone who personally always found the art style to cause me physical pain, I'm noticeably undisturbed by it. Though it could be that my eyes aren't animated at 12 frames a second like some kind of psychopath made them. Seriously, the low frame rate of animated is one of the most offensive things I've ever seen, and I will never get over it. For accessories, he comes with his two boosters in clear plastic for some reason. You guys couldn't cast that in black or something? Why would you make it clear? Whatever, it's robust enough that I don't think these are going to break. You can pretend that they're guns, but they aren't blast effect compatible, so I don't know what you're doing, you weirdo. He also comes with his stingers. However, for some godforsaken reason, they made the backs of the wrists which these mount to these weird angled protrusions. There is no holy reason to sculpt them like this, and they only make the figure worse, as they seem to cause some tabbing issues with the alt mode. I guess they did this solely so that way he can make this one single pose with them, but if you want to have him double fisting them like a sane person, you have to mount these on the backs of his rockets. This is such a bad implementation of this figure, it's kind of unreal. So normally I'd say that having 4 accessories like this is a net positive for the figure, but this isn't a normal situation. The compromises made to the alt mode so that way the stingers can angle like they do are pretty unforgivable. On the one hand, they don't stop you from getting to the car mode. On the other, you can 100% tell that this aspect was added after everything else was finished. The underside of the vehicle is not set up to accommodate the changes to the wrist geometry, and as a result, they are constantly putting pressure on it and causing the whole thing to rest weirdly. Anyways, after that unfortunate result, the posability is really good. Head with a maximum up, more side to side than normal and a regular rotation, shoulders pull a 90, elbows bend in 2 places, making for a weird extreme range. However, as a result, the shoulders have nothing even approaching a full rotation. It's still a decent range, but it is a weird abnormal limitation. Wrist swib and narcissus if you untransform it a little, hips are unimpeded in all directions, good bit better than 90 knees, and the clashiest ankle tilts of all time, to the point where I was convinced for a while that he didn't have them. The feet are a bit annoying, and the shoulders are a weird bummer. Most poses you will be able to get, but there are a good number of less typical ones that you are flat barred from, and that's kind of a result of the shoulder joint being far too complex for its own good. Reinventing the wheel, if you would. However, it's mostly pretty good on the posability, and I'd still say it's way better than the Earthrise Cliff Jumper. Then the transformation is also really good, only marred by those shitty wrist spurs. This is why I have always and will always trash the Earthrise Cliff Jumper. This is a figure about the same size as him, with a more complex transformation than him, that is less awkward, isn't based on something that already existed, resulted in a better looking figure, and didn't require parts forming to let it work at all. They were capable of so much better, and this is the proof of that. It is fun, it is relatively fast, and it didn't cheat anywhere to get there. There is never an excuse for mandatory parts forming. And the end result is pretty damn spot on. There is a little bit of schmutz on the side of the car, what with a big hinge built in and the accessory port in the door. I really could have lived without mounting something there. But it's not ruined at least. The ports in the back are far less egregious and serve a far more important and consistent point, as that's where you tack on his boosters, which again, clear plastic, weird, but they work well enough, and you can add his stingers to pretend that they are the booster flames firing out of the back. It would probably have been better to let these be blast effect compatible, but this doesn't look as bad or silly as you might think. I suppose you can always stick those blast effects down here. Honestly, to my surprise, despite the insanity of it, I'd say this actually works. And so does the little light on the top of the car being clear. That just looks remarkably good. Plus, this is one of the best rolling figures I've gotten in a while. This boy loves to move. But it's also not one of those things that just wants to roll off your desk for no reason. You gotta put a little oomph into him, but when you do, he will go and go and go and go. And outside of a few panel lines and the aforementioned port and hinge, this just looks really pretty cohesive. Even if I question why the clear plastic that otherwise comprises this figure exists, when all you can see through it is a mess. And this mode is incredibly accurate. Anyone who is having heart palpitations at the changes made to the robot mode can perhaps calm down a little bit here, as this does look like an incredibly faithfully recreated version of his show model. And what's funny is that this also has more of the G1 Bumblebee energy than any figure the G1 guy has gotten in like a decade, by feeling like a squashed down little cartoon version of a toy than normal. So is this the most value you will get for a deluxe in the universe? No, but I do think that despite the size, it is giving you the value of a deluxe. The robot mode looks good enough to please me, someone who doesn't like the base design to begin with, and I think it's accurate enough to please those of you who are insane and like the way the show looked. It was a good show, it was well written, I liked all the characters, and they had some really good robot villains, with an insanely intimidating Megatron. God, I hated looking at it. The clash of the head and the body isn't enough to get offended by, and the posability is really pretty good, only marred by some weird shoulders that can inhibit some of the stuff that you may want to do, but will mostly be unobtrusive. The accessories would be good if their integration didn't make the transformation slightly worse, but it's not enough to ruin the conversion, which is pretty good, fun, and satisfying, with no compromises like stupid parts forming. And then the alt mode is great. It's doing exactly what you want for this character, and it's fully featured and fun. I can't say that this is a figure that belongs in every collection. If you don't care for animated, then you don't need this. If you have a Bumblebee that's already everything that you wanted, then you don't need to run out and buy this, and if you need to feel like you bought something substantially sized with your $25, then this won't do it for you. And maybe if you're buying this for a kid, then have some pause until we can see how well this figure holds up in the long term thanks to the clear plastic joints. But if you like animated, or you want to give something a try that's perhaps a little different, I think you will be pleased by this. It's a solid 6.5 or 7 out of 10 figure. Not amazing, but good. And closing out, I recently saw TRDQ do something at the end of his videos that I really liked and I think I'm going to steal. Because I've been trying to find a better way to thank my patrons for a very long time now. And he came up with what I think is a pretty good method. So let's pick a patron. Alright, congratulations and huge thanks to the first patron ever to be selected like this, Jimmy Pop, whose favorite Transformer of all time is the Lemon Tree Purple Potato. Excellent pick. That figure rules. It poses great, it looks cool as shit, it turns into an awesome thing that we needed as a community, and if only mine's transformation weren't so borked. Also, I now know why I wanted to say potato in a Russian accent when I did my video on this thing. It's because of Potato from Moonshine Productions. Anyways, that's not half of what I have to say, but it's enough of what I have to say. And I know you know what everyone else tells you to do at the end of these videos. So if you liked what you saw here, please do that. And if you'd like to take it a step further, then please share this video with any friend you think may be interested. I hope you all enjoyed listening to me waste your time.